Hey good people, Big Heavy here, and it's been a hot minute since we've done a power bank review, so I'm excited to be coming at you today with a review of the Monster Power Station 300. In case you didn't know the branding, it's obviously right there on the side in bright yellow. And if you were a child of the 90s or the early 2000s like myself, that Monster branding may bring back a little bit of nostalgia. You know, you may have remembered scraping together your lawn mowing money and gone to your local electronics store, all excited to bring home that new Pioneer or Technics amplifier, or maybe that sweet 6-disc CD changer. And once you had everything picked out and you were at the register, you know, pulling out those crumpled up, greasy, hard-earned, sweaty $20 bills, the salesperson invariably would try and tell you that you needed some gold-plated fiber optic cables because gold makes everything sound better, obviously. Goldfinger. This is indeed that same Monster brand. I don't know if they're still in the gold-plated audio cable business, but they've now expanded into power banks and they're bringing you a 300 watt hour, you know, nice and portable battery bank. As usual, I'll give you a quick little spin around. We'll talk about usability, what I like, what I don't like about this sucker. And to start out with, that comes in, I think, 3 or 4 different color schemes. This is the, you know, nice high visibility greenish / safety yellow type color scheme. I thought this one looked kind of cool, and the plastics on here seem pretty high quality. You know, everything's nicely assembled and put together. It's got a little bit of an industrial look with these visible screws and this kind of bumper plastic on here. This stuff does feel like it's a little bit softer than the main body. I don't know if that's just because of the paint that's on there or if it's actually a little bit more rubberized to kind of give you a little bit of protection around the corners and edges. But that same feel and material extends over to this handle, which most of me really likes. And when I say most of me, you know, it's obvious how you grab this thing. It's nice and big, it's super meaty. You know, you can carry it like a little bit of a lunchbox. You know, you can kind of hold it up like a giant Oktoberfest style beer stein. Prost, by the way. But just really easy and obvious to figure out where to carry the thing. The one part of me that's a little bit skeptical of this big old handle is it makes it a little funky to pack. You've got this big protrusion coming out of here, so if you're packing it with a whole bunch of stuff, it's an otherwise, you know, very nice rectangular squared off box, but that handle will make it a little funky if you're trying to shove it in with a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, taking a little tour around the unit, and this is the smallest power bank I've reviewed, so we don't have the Lazy Susan. We don't need one to go around here. But we'll start on kind of the business end where we have the power switch, the light on off switch, as well as the input switch for the DC power brick. There's nothing particularly noteworthy about the power brick. It's a pretty small size, has one little light to tell you that it's on. Doesn't have any fans or anything in there, so that's kind of nice. I'm not sure what kind of connector this is. It doesn't seem like anything particularly strange or that I've seen before conversely, so I'm not sure if this is something that you could replace with a universal power brick. Turning the unit on, it's 2 presses of the power switch. You got a nice little light on the power button as well as the display coming on. And that's probably my biggest complaint about this unit. As you can see there, the display just has a little battery segment display, and then it'll also tell you if you have various other inputs on or off. Just turned on the DC input, you get a little thing that says DC there with a little lightning bolt to let you know it's on. Turn on the USB, similar thing. But you don't get anything on the display that tells you your current output, you know, nothing in terms of wattage or anything like that. You don't get any kind of a time remaining display. Your only indication of how much power you have remaining is this multi-segment battery over here. These things are notoriously inaccurate. You know, they usually go down in a non-linear manner. What I mean by that is it'll take you 70% of the battery to get through the first 50% on the indicator. I think that's just a fluke of battery chemistry and the circuitry that measures these things. So I really wish, if nothing else, it had kind of a percentage battery life remaining. I think that would be helpful. I think the kind of gold standard is an estimated time remaining that kind of takes everything that you've got connected to the device and calculates the time that you have left. So that's a little bit disappointing. You do have this light on here. It is a bit confusing on how you activate it. You got to hold the button down. And you know, once again, it's much easier to carry this than like a Jackery or some of the really heavy units that have a little light bulb on it. You can turn on a little flickering mode where it will send out some sort of emergency SOS beacon. The thing about these lights, they're not particularly practical in my mind. You know, yes, you could carry this thing around like a flashlight at night, and you know, I guess if you're out and you somehow find yourself in an emergency where you have no lights other than this thing, which is probably a bit of a stretch considering everything from your phones to your watches these days have a little bit of a flashlight on it. It might save the day. But my big beef with having a light on the side of a power bank that tries to play the role of janky flashlight is it doesn't help you when all your inputs are on the back side of the unit. So if I was legitimately in the dark, didn't have any power, didn't have a flashlight or anything on me, having a light over here is not going to help me see anything over here where I'm probably trying to plug stuff in. So I think the better solution for any power bank manufacturers that say, hey, let me put a big old giant light on the side of this thing and then I can add another bullet point to my feature list. Instead of doing that, just put a couple little tiny LEDs where your actual plugs are. You could use something like you use in a motor vehicle with those little kind of soft lights that illuminate the buttons or other controls on the dashboard. That would actually be useful if I did find myself in a room with no flashlights in the pitch black versus, if I was in that situation, I could kind of try and shine this thing off a wall or build some elaborate reflector scheme with my hands to try and see where I was plugging stuff in, assuming I didn't have any other lights. Now we'll zoom around to all the sides because there's nothing that interesting. Blank panel over here, Monster branding over here. If we go to the top, there is a nice wireless charging pad. I did test that with a current, I think I have an iPhone 13, worked just fine on there. The other thing you'll notice as we go around is each power section, much like Jackery, has one button that turns that input on and off. You get a nice little indicator light on the button that's controlling that output, as well as an indicator on the display over here. So that's kind of a nice feature. I like when you're able to segment the inputs and outputs on and off. That proves pretty helpful. The meat of the action is on this back panel over here. So you got a couple things going on. You've got a 12-volt car cigarette lighter style adapter. This could be useful for your 12-volt fridges, things like that. You also have this standard DC barrel connector output. I would use this for something like charging up a portable two-way radio or similar. On the USB front, you have 3 standard USB outputs. You have 2 that I think share the same 5 watts or so. And then you have another standard USB output as well as a USB-C output that provides 60 watts of power. You can use this to charge your laptop, your iPad, or other higher current devices like some of the modern Android phones, and you'll give them a much faster charge than if you use the standard USB port. You also have 2 AC plugs down here. What's nice is turning on the AC output doesn't seem to spin up any fans or generate any noise or anything like that. They're also grounded plugs, which is nice. Although to some extent, I don't know if that's a worthwhile feature since I did try and give this unit the espresso test with an espresso machine and it didn't go so hot, as you can see. Let's see if we can get an espresso out of this doggy. So we'll put the old Nespresso machine into the back of the Monster power bank. Get our pod in there. We know K-cups aren't going to cut it when the zombies come, so we're rocking a little Nescafe espresso pod here. And it looks like we're already over power. We got the little blinky warning thing on there, no fans spun up, no nothing, which makes sense. I think the inverter on this guy is rated for about 300 watts, so clearly it's not going to run a 1,000+ watt coffee maker. So if you need your espresso fix before you go out and fight the zombies, you're gonna need a little something bigger than the Monster power station. So what's the use case for this unit? Who is it for? Who would I recommend this for? I think this sub 500 watt power bank size is good if you're doing something like going camping, maybe taking an extended road trip and you've got a vehicle that doesn't have a bunch of USB outlets or a bunch of 12-volt outlets, or maybe you're using those things for dash cams or radar detectors or something else. You got kids in the back that want to charge up their devices or play with their Switch or whatnot. This guy is pretty small, he's pretty lightweight. You could throw him in the back seat. There's enough power coming out of the AC outputs as well as the USB outputs, obviously, that you could have a half dozen people in your party bus and they can all keep their devices charged. And it would probably last you, a day or so until you got to your destination and we're going to charge this puppy up. This might also be effective for a camping trip if you didn't have any higher draw devices. And the big one I'm thinking of is a 12-volt cooler. This does say it'll run your 12-volt cooler for about 3 hours. I think you'd actually get a little more life out of it since most of those coolers don't run constantly unless you're out in the Serengeti or some really hot environment. So you might get double or triple that. So we're talking 12 to 18 hours, which on one hand is great, but also most camping trips are gonna be a little bit longer than 12 to 18 hours. If you're out for 3 or 4 days, this guy's not gonna be able to power your cooler throughout that whole trip. And you might end up with spoiled food or some other problem, unless you're out camping in Siberia where the cooler doesn't really need to run its compressor all that much. So among the world of smaller power banks, what I like is, again, I like this handle, I like this form factor, assuming this guy's not gonna be problematic when you're trying to pack it. But if you're kind of throwing it in the back seat so people could charge their devices, if you're throwing it on your picnic table out in the campground, I think the handle adds more benefit than it detracts. You do have a lot of outputs for something this size. This guy has, I think, more outputs than something like a Jackery 1000. You got the 3 USBs, you got this nice charging pad on top. You got your 12 volt as well as this barrel connector, so you can connect a lot of devices to it. There's a couple challenges, however, with the power level and the outputs. First of all, you have these nice grounded plugs, but it's a max of 300 watts that these guys are gonna put out. It says so right on there. Again, failed the espresso test, which is unsurprising considering that probably takes 1,000 watts when it heats up the water to make your coffee. So other than plugging in power bricks to charge up small batteries and things like that, you're not gonna be able to run a heck of a lot in terms of the AC power on this guy. The other couple of big challenges I have with this unit are it takes forever to charge. We talked about the lack of any information on this display beyond the little battery stack. When I got this in the mail, it was probably 25% charged, and it took a good 6 or 7 hours to charge it up. So it's not the end of the world if you're doing something like a multi-day road trip where at the end of the night you're hopefully sleeping for 10 or 11 hours. If you got out of your car, remembered to immediately plug this guy in, you'd have a full battery in the morning. If you're doing a cannonball run or something where you were maybe getting to a hotel around 10, 11 at night and trying to get out on the road at 6 in the morning and you only got 4 or 5 hours to power this thing up, I don't think you'd be able to get a full charge in there every night, which could be problematic. The price point is also a little bit higher than some of the others. On one hand, you could say, hey, you've got a recognized brand, you've got a brand that's been around for a long time. Monster does on the box note that they have a lifetime warranty, which could be really interesting. Obviously, I can't go forward into the future and see how this guy holds up or see how they take care of you if, 15 years from now, the thing's not holding a charge anymore and you ask them to make good on their lifetime warranty. But I think that's a benefit, although this seems to retail around 300 bucks, and that's a little bit higher than some of the others. You can look at some of the smaller offerings from Jackery, from EcoFlow, from Bluetti, from the myriad power bank manufacturers out there. If you wait for a sale, you're probably around 200 bucks, so you're a third cheaper than this guy. So in this segment, I'd personally lean towards the cheapest power bank that meets your needs, that comes from a major manufacturer. Don't go into the no-name brands, since there is some risk to having a whole bunch of lithium-ion batteries sitting in your house somewhere. But if this color scheme is attractive to you, if having a pretty good selection of inputs is attractive to you, if this handle kind of deal is attractive to you, and you're not doing anything where if you run out of juice, it's going to be a major problem, so the battery runtime remaining doesn't really bother you, and that lifetime warranty thing is really attractive, this may be a good power bank to consider. It's worth putting it in your consideration set. I think the market usually does a pretty good job of sorting out some of the companies that are priced way outside of everyone else. So, we may see the pricing on this change. And if it wasn't for that higher price, it would be a good, solid, pretty well built, robust, portable, kind of cool with the different color schemes. If, you and your off-roading buddies or something all have the same stuff, you get ones that look a little different so you don't get them confused. But overall, a decent, well-assembled, well-featured, well-put together with a few minor detractors kind of power bank, as long as they can get that price sorted out, or maybe you find one that's on sale, or that lifetime warranty is worth 100 bucks to you. Maybe you use these in a little bit of a rough usage environment, or you're just worried about the thing breaking on you, and you've got a relatively long-standing brand that presumably has a pretty good reputation and is going to provide that lifetime warranty. So if you're in the market for a sub 500 watt hour-ish battery bank and you've considered the Monster, or you maybe bought one, throw that in the comments. Be interested to hear how you've enjoyed it in the longer term. If you shop this guy and went with something else, let us know what you went with. Maybe that'll give some advice and input to some of the other folks that are in a similar situation looking for this type of battery pack. And mash the subscribe button, and hope to see you in the next video, and wish you and yours a powerful rest of your day. Big Heavy, saying peace.
Ever wonder why every talking head on YouTube asks you to hit the like and subscribe button at the end of their video? You were right, because we're living in a computer simulation. And our benevolent robotic overlords get just a little bit of energy every time you hit that like. So do me, the rest of civilization, and our benevolent robotic overlords a favor. Mash that subscribe, be kind to each other, keep living your simulated dreams.